Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this webinar from the NIH HEAL Initiative on a program announcement. So this is specifically on the integrated basic and clinical team-based research in pain. This is the RM1 mechanism with clinical trial optional, and the RFA is RFA-NS 22069. So myself, DP Mohapatra, I'm a program lead for this program and a program director in NINDS and the NIH HEAL Initiative. I'm joined with Dr. Rachel Weinberg. She's a health program specialist and will be coordinating these programs. And we are also joined by multiple program officials and program directors, program officers from multiple NIH ICs, institutes, and centers who are a part of the NIH RM1, HEAL RM1 team. So next slide, please. So this is one of the programs in the NIH Helping to End Addiction Long-Term or HEAL initiative. So this initiative was developed and initiated to combat the current opioid crisis and to provide scientific solutions to that crisis. So one of the priority areas in the NIH HEAL initiative is pain research, with a focus on enhancing pain management by understanding the biological underpinnings of chronic pain as well as acute pain conditions, and also to accelerate the discovery and preclinical development of non-addictive pain treatments or therapeutics, and advance these therapeutics through clinical pipelines, and also inform best practices for effective pain management while minimizing risk of addiction. So through this initiative, and you can see the focus on the pain research. So one of the big focus area is to understand the biology of human pain, and that's what this specific funding opportunity announcement is addressing. So next slide, please. So the goal of this specific program announcement or funding announcement is to really facilitate the integrated efforts for bold and impactful as well as challenging research in basic and clinical pain domains, so as to understand the biology of specific human pain conditions, and also could be pain associated with different diseases, disorders. It could also include mechanistic underpinning of heterogeneity and stratification of patients with specific pain conditions as well as comorbidities. So again, the goal is quite broad and big. But then to achieve these goals, what we really designed is a team science approach. And why is a team science approach? So as you all researchers, scientists, you know, team science approach actually expands our ability to pursue complex and challenging problems in biomedical research overall in a very comprehensive, rigorous, interdisciplinary, and mechanistic manner. So, so the goal here is to utilize a strong team science approach to achieve the goals of this specific program. So next slide, please. So you might ask, like, what is this RM1 team science funding mechanism and how it compares with other funding mechanisms from NIH? So a vast majority of hypothesis-driven research are done through the NIH R01 mechanisms, where there could be single or multiple PIs and one set of aims, and interdisciplinary team is not required necessary but encouraged. And typically these are heavily hypothesis-driven, and there could be current parent R01 mechanisms or R01 specifically focused on one or multiple areas or diseases or conditions. Then there are bigger program projects like P01 or P30s or other program project mechanisms utilized by multiple institutes and centers in NIH. So these program projects comprise of multiple projects and cores that really cohesively connect with each other to like address a bigger question or a goal, where there are multiple PIs and there are team-specific features and resources within specific projects and cores to achieve the overall goals. Whereas the NIH RM1 mechanism, so what it does is it really requires a team science where there are 3 to 6 PIs, and they have just one set of aims, which are very cohesive and synergistic to each other, uh, that would address a common big goal in terms of understanding the human pain biology. And there are team specific features and resources in this mechanism. And the teams always should leverage multidisciplinary expertise to develop either new principles or methods for experimentation, new analytical and interpretation methods or processes. And these team research should be very transformative in terms of their overall goal and objectives, with a very clearly defined 5-year outcomes that will produce major advances in human pain. And again, this could be focused on a very specific area in a pain condition, but it's all type of human pain conditions are included here. It's not very prescriptive of what exact pain conditions, or it's not prohibitive of any specific pain conditions. But the major consideration in the NIH RM1 team science mechanism is this should not represent a collection of individual efforts or parallel projects to ask a big question. So here, the goal is it should be a big question and then an interdisciplinary effort to achieve that question. Next slide, please. So the key features again is this is a very focused single 5-year goal, and the goal is to understand the biology of specific human pain conditions. It could be one or it could be multiple pain conditions, and it could be pain associated with specific diseases or different diseases, disorders. It could also include mechanistic underpinning of heterogeneity and stratification of patients with specific human pain conditions. Could also include comorbidities with pain. Again, as I just alluded to, so there are 3 or more PIs, PDPIs, but maximum up to 6 PDPIs. And the research team should really strive to establish a common goal requiring collaboration, synergy, and manage team interaction, and how their expertise really complement each other to achieve that goal. So the team should leverage different multidisciplinary expertise. They could develop new principles, methods, experimentation, analysis, and interpretation. And we really encourage the teams to consider transformative objectives with a defined 5-year outcomes that will actually produce major advances in the understanding of human pain conditions, biology of human pain, and that are likely to improve the strategies for effective management of human pain in future. Again, these are very clear set defined 5-year outcomes. Remember, these are not renewable type of mechanisms as opposed to like RO1 and other mechanisms. Next slide, please. So just like to give you some examples, but again, these are not prescriptive examples, and also these are not very, these examples are not just limited to these conditions or the points mentioned here. So you could propose a basic translational or clinical collaboration with a goal of reaching significantly higher mechanistic understanding of either a specific human pain condition or conditions, or pain associated with different disease disorders. And as I alluded before, also about the heterogeneity and stratification of patients with specific pain conditions and comorbidities. So the scientific efforts that require basically integration of previously soiled and or disparate areas of technical or scientific expertise to understand specific human pain conditions, as well as heterogeneity and stratification or comorbidities could be of another example there. And there could be other cases where a scientific question which really requires to leverage innovative combinations of different approaches as well as tools to understand a specific human condition that could be of responsiveness to this RFA. Next slide, please. So as you can see that this is a integrated basic and clinical team-based research. So there are clinical research involved. However, even though the clinical trial optional is there, but there are only two types of clinical trials which are allowed in this RFA. One is the mechanistic trials, which is defined as studies that are designed to understand the biological or behavioral process, pathophysiology of disease, or the mechanism of action of an intervention, but not to test the efficacy or if the safety of the intervention. Remember, if the mechanistic trial is proposed, then the sole use of the intervention used is to absolutely understand the mechanism of the human pain condition or the biology of human pain condition. And the other type of clinical trial is basic experimental studies with human, or call it as BESH. That's also defined as basic research studies that involves humans. And the goal of these studies is to seek to understand the fundamental aspects of the pain as a phenomenon, not as a performing a trial for a therapeutics there. Next slide, please. So in terms of approach for this RM1 application and the mechanism, uh, there must be a innovative combination of expertise as well as the field of research from multiple PIs, and their goal is to pursue a single big question or a problem in human pain biology. And this should not look like a collection of individual efforts or even interrelated or parallel projects, because in this case, the interrelated or parallel project should really fit into a multi-component program project or other mechanisms, but not to the RM1. And in order to really develop a truly integrated collaborative project, there should be only a single set of specific aims organized in order to address the overall goal, question, overall objectives, rather than parallel PI contributions or individual PI contributions to the question. So the big focus should be on the question rather than on the multiple approaches to combine those approach for a like an incremental work. And again, most of the specific aims should require substantial contribution from one or more PIs. It should not look like that some of the PIs are just added for a smaller area or component to address the overall goals there. Although this RFA requires both clinical and basic research in a team-based mechanism, we are not prescriptive of the balance of preclinical and clinical or data science approaches that are integrated into the project. It should be well justified and described in terms of the relative balance between basic and clinical, but there is no clear set levels. But again, it should not look like individual parallel projects for basic and clinical separate. It has to be well integrated into one. Next slide, please. In terms of the scale of this RM1 mechanism and the goal of this basic and clinical team-based research in pain, there should be shared leadership amongst all the PI. There should be equal contributors as well as reflect which should be very well reflected in the aims, their efforts, and each of the PIs should have distinct scientific viewpoints or expertise that is absolutely necessary to pursue the interdisciplinary approach proposed in their application. The scale is likely to really benefit from resources of a person, someone like a team manager, they should have a very good team management plan, data scientist, and a good data management plan. And these resources should be requested under the team management plan and also included specifically in the budget for these. And the budget in terms of, okay, let me go to the scale before in terms of the application component. So there should be like a research strategy of 30 pages, which should give expanded like page limit and benefit for proposing a detailed research approach plan And there are other attachments that are needed here as a defined team management plan, which is 3 pages maximum, a timeline and benchmark for success in 5 years. That should be a 2-page maximum document, and a plan for enhancing diverse perspectives. And that's a 1-page maximum. And these are under the other attachments. And the budget should not have any sub-projects. It should have just one integrated budget, but it should not exceed $1 million direct cost per year, up to 5 years maximum. Next, please. So here I want to mention that there is a requirement in this RFA that each of the PIs or PDPIs, they have to devote at least 2.4 person month or calendar month effort throughout the entire duration of the award. And the total research effort should include their both all the research efforts combined, in case they are affiliated to multiple institutions or multiple types of appointment. And it should be expressed as person months or calendar months, but not as percentage effort. And it should not include time that is spent towards teaching or administration or other activities that are not related to the PDPI's research, and not even the clinical duties. So the effort should be completely effort in this RM1 mechanism or application. So next slide, please. So there are certain non-responsive criteria specifically for this RM1 team science mechanism, and particularly of this HEAL mission on understanding the human pain biology through integrated basic and clinical team-based research. So if there are research areas outside the NIH HEAL initiative, mission on pain or non-pain areas, then they are not responsive. If there are applications that propose a very systematic team-based plan to discover and develop small molecules or biologic therapeutics or devices to treat pain, then they are not responsive, since these type of applications or goals are already covered by several different funding opportunity announcements and through the HEAL initiative. And also, if the sole goal is to identify and validate a therapeutic target, that's also not responsive, because that's been covered through other FOAs in the HEAL initiative. So if there are applications without a very well-defined overall goal and objectives that can be achievable within the time frame, like 5 years of the grant, and through a very collaborative, collective, and integrated effort, then that would be deemed non-responsive. And any applications that would propose exploration of a single line of research, or any proposed parallel but independent advancement in different areas of pain, even different areas within clinical and within basic, but they are just trying to just put it together, those would be also considered non-responsive. And also, for example, if there are studies clearly focused on just developing discovery or validation of biomarkers, they would not be responsive, because we have separate biomarker programs and research funding opportunities in the HEAL initiative. Although if there are like smaller inclusions of like biomarker-based information to understand the human pain biology, that is allowable within the bigger goal and approach of this team science mechanisms. And if there are clinical trials that are designed to answer specific question about safety, tolerability, efficacy, or any effectiveness of therapeutics or devices, or any other interventions, then those would not be responsive. Those designs should be submitted to NIH HEAL initiatives, specific funding opportunities on clinical trials. So you can go through the NIH HEAL initiative funding websites mentioned here to learn more on those funding opportunities. Next slide, please. So in order for you to prepare for RM1 applications, there are specific components of these applications, this RM1 mechanism, which I have alluded to before, like specific aims, 1 page, 30 pages of integrated research strategy, research plan, then 3 pages of team management plan, timeline and benchmarks for success, 2 pages, and 1 page plans for enhancing diverse perspectives, as well as there is optional 5 pages maximum for IRB communications in case it's dependent on your specific type of clinical explorations included and proposed in this study. So currently our first seed date is February 14th, 2023 for new applications. Then we have 3 more receipt dates for in June 14th and then October 13th, as well as February 12th of 2024. We'll be also we'll have receipt dates for resubmissions or revision applications in November 13th and March 11th, 2024. Next slide, please. So it would be really good if you could submit, you're interested in submitting RM1 application, then please submit a letter of intent. Although it's not mandatory or required or necessary, but it really helps us manage the program as well as to inform the review branch so that they can prepare for adequate review expertise recruitment there. So your letter of intent should provide a description of the title as well as name and contact address for all the PDPIs and names of other key personnel, other participating, all the participating institutions, and the number and title of this funding opportunity, and a brief description of your overall goals. And you can send it to us either to me or to our other contacts, which you'll see at the end of this presentation, since this is a team effort for the NIH program side. So we have multiple program officials and program coordinator from multiple institutes here. Next slide, please. So preparing your RM1 application, your science focus should have 2 big components there in terms of your specific aims. You should have only one set of specific aims that are organized to address the overall goal and objectives, and how that would really address or achieve the goal you are proposing in order to understand the biology or mechanism of human pain. And this should not really list or even append all the individual or parallel PI contributions there. The description should be very concise on the goals and objectives of the entire project, your big impact and scope of the work, and how your integrated basic and clinical pain research approach will result in a very significant improvement in our understanding of the biology of human pain condition or conditions that you are, or comorbidities, or patient stratification, which you are proposing. And you should also in the specific aims describe briefly the interdisciplinary team structure and how the represented areas of expertise in your team will enhance the approach and the outcome of the project. In terms of research strategy, it is 30 pages maximum, so you can really elaborate on how the project challenges the existing paradigms, how it would overcome the long-standing roadblocks to the progress, and or developing new synergies between different scientific fields, and how this will really change the way we understand human pain biology and mechanism, specifically for the condition you are proposing there. There should be justification for the team science and the team composition in detail, and a detailed approach should be provided. And there are other requirements like defined 5-year outcomes, what's the environment, your rigor and transparency. And in terms of rigor and transparency of your research, both your rigor and transparency of your proposed work, as well as any preliminary studies and results that you have included in your application. So the both sides are equally important there. And you can see these detailed description in the RFA. Next slide, please. So in addition to science research strategy side, so you have three other documents that are required, which are under other attachment. One is the team management plan. So the team management plan should focus on management of the whole team and your key personnel in the RM1. This is as opposed to your RO1 or other program projects or other grants where you are providing a multi-PDPI leadership plan. So there it focuses on leadership by interaction across PIs. But here, that's not the goal. The goal is how the like cohesive team management is key to the proposed application, proposed goals of your RM1 application. You should consult resources if possible for developing these effective team-based programs. NCI has a collaboration and team science field guide in their website. So, and the link is also provided in the FOA, so you could follow that. We are not specifically providing any template or form, but we recommend that you should structure the plan with specific subheadings. These are detailed in the funding opportunity announcement, like what's your organizational structure and team composition. You could include here the detailed justification for a program manager, program coordinator to overall coordinate the team organization. You should also give the shared leadership contribution plans, distribution of responsibilities, decision making, then resource sharing allocation across the team, then credit assignment, and you should really elaborate on the details of the credit assignments rather than just touching overview on that. And coordination and communication plans, it should include all relevant personnel there, not just PDPIs. And also should touch on the intra-team data sharing, then archiving of the data, then how do you preserve the data. So all these, including a plan to sharing data to the public, will be something you should elaborate in this team management plan. Then the other attachment is timeline and benchmarks for success. Again, it should include a project timeline. You could possibly utilize Gantt charts or tables of similar structures that would include all major tasks to be performed during the project, as well as benchmarks that are critical throughout your timeline, and what's the benchmark for success there. And you could include the chart, like the estimated start date or completion dates of specific tasks there within the chart. And you could also identify the contributions of specific or each PDPIs there into the task. Reviewers will actually utilize this information to assess the feasibility and the degree of integration and strong collaboration for your application. So make sure you spell these out very articulately there. And again, this document will be reviewed and assessed under the approach section. Next slide, please. And then the third one is plans to enhance diverse perspectives. So this is one page. So you can find instructions and FAQs on some of the examples of it. So, so the meaning of diverse perspective here is investigators in your team with diverse background, then underrepresented groups, as well as institutional diversity, geographical regional diversity, career stage diversity, transdisciplinary science diversity, or even inclusion of community-based partners. So that would be something you should really well articulate. And again, within your research strategy, you should try to integrate strategies to advance the scientific and technical merit of the proposed project through the inclusion of these diverse perspectives. And this is again assessed under the approach section during the review. So let's jump into the review criteria there. So what happens in the review normally? So once the application is received, it's checked for completedness and compliance by the review officer, and it's also checked for responsiveness to the program and funding opportunity announcement. And this would be done by the HEAL RM1 program staff and program team. So then the SROs and the review branch will recruit the scientific areas of expertise they need. And as an applicant, you can feel free to put some science-specific expertise needed to really assess your application. And you could do that in the assignment request form or the cover letter. And also, the SRO would communicate with the applicants on the meeting date and any information on post-submission materials based on the policy. And after the review group meeting, scores are typically released within 3 to 5 working days, and summary statements are released by 3 to 6 weeks after the meeting. Next slide, please. Let's go through a little bit about like really what's the difference here in terms of reviews. So in this RM1 mechanism, in addition to your science, your research strategy, specific aims, but there are 3 other areas, which is review, time management, team management plan, timeline, benchmarks, and PEDP. So make sure that you will articulate these, because these are absolutely under review parameters there. So next slide, please. So in terms of reviewing of these RM1 applications, it's not like a standard R01. It's a little bit different, quite similar in terms of the 5 criteria for review, like an R01: significance, innovation, investigator, approach, and environment. Uh, so typically in R01 application reviews, the approach criteria is often the main score driving criteria. But for this team science RM1 mechanism, the actual emphasis for review will be on how the multi-PI team will drive the integrated basic and clinical science, and pain particularly here, and how the research will be completed in the approach as posed. And you should really like specify and articulate very well why the team approach is needed to address the scientific question or the issue that you are proposing there. Next slide, please. Specifically for these 5 review criteria in RM1 mechanism, so in the significance, the reviewers will review your application on to what extent your proposed program's integrated team research effort will be transformative in terms of human pain biology and understanding human pain. In terms of investigator, really they would assess whether each investigator in your team is necessary and will contribute towards achieving the goals of the program. And they will also assess heavily on the team management plan. And in terms of innovation, they will assess whether your program involves innovative ideas or approaches that would be very difficult to pursue through independently funded individual or multi-PDPI research project grants. So make sure you really clearly articulate on these in your application. In terms of approach, whether the combination of the scientific expertise that your team has, whether that really presents a compelling case that the interdisciplinary and collaborative research that you are proposing will absolutely enable the scientific advance in human pain biology field. And again, they will assess the timeline and benchmarks for success that you are proposing. So make sure you really clearly articulate the timeline and benchmarks for success. And lastly, in terms of environment, they will assess whether there is a strong synergy that really would drive the success. for your proposed application. And in addition to these, the plans to clearly enhance diverse perspectives, they will be assessed under all these criteria. Next slide, please. So in terms of PEDP questions, they'll really assess to what extent your efforts described in the PEDP plan actually further the significance of the project, and to what extent it would enhance the expertise required for the project in terms of investigators, and how it will meaningfully contribute to innovation, and how really the milestone timelines and the benchmarks that are associated with the PEDP plan really is well developed, and how feasible it is. And also in terms of environment, how these features of the environment you describe in your plan would really provide a collaborative arrangements and geographic diversity, other institutional support, and how overall they will contribute to the success of your project. That's what something they will again address that. So next slide, please. So what are the next steps now in your RM1? So we can assist you with evaluating the fit of your application to the HEAL RM1 program goals. So we highly encourage all of you to send us your specific aims, your team composition, your RM1 justification. And when you are providing the justification, make sure you really provide and be very clear and direct on why the question or the problem you are identifying or your goal you are putting further. It needs an integrated approach across diverse expertise, both in the clinical and basic side in pain. So you can find all details of the application and review section and every other post award to eligibility in the funding opportunity announcement website. If you have any question, feel free to send me an email or Dr. Rachel Weinberg. And also, I would like to make a call here. Please consider, if you are not submitting application immediately, or even if you are submitting now in future, please consider volunteering to serve in the study section, a review group for this RM1 mechanism. That would be a big help to the program. Next slide, please. This is the last one. I wanted to put here all the team contacts for this NIH HEAL RM1 program team from NIH. So feel free to communicate any of us, and we will definitely find out a team or discuss, and then set up a meeting with you to discuss your ideas and your application plans there. So with that, I will stop you here. Thank you all, and we'll be happy to take the questions here and address your questions. So are there questions already there? Yes, I can see the first question. How does being a PI on an RM1 influence early stage investigator status? Is the ESI status lost if the RM1 is funded? That is correct. So since this is not a multi-component grant, this is a single grant. So in case of involvement of ESI, early stage career investigator, award of the RM1 will lead to a loss of early stage investigator status. That is what my understanding, but if other program officials from other NIH institutes, please chime in if I'm wrong. Okay, so let me go to the second question. If no sub-awards are allowed, does that imply that this will have to be limited to single institutions? No, this sub-awards to another institution would be allowed if there are PIs from another institution. So that is if I did not make it clear, my apologies. Yes, that certainly would be allowed. And the next question is how extensive should the letter of intent be? It should be really succinct. You do not need to go into very detail, but if you can provide at least a summary, like an overall goal, what you have, and a very succinct approach, and your team with expertise, and what's your overall multidisciplinary approach to address the goals and objectives of your study, that would be a big help. Again, you should not exceed 1 page for that. The next question is, does the team have to be comprised of people who have not worked together before, or are previous collaborations allowed? Both these cases are allowed. There is no absolute requirement that you have to have worked together before. You can form a new collaboration here. You can also continue or solidify your collaboration from your previous collaborations. That is absolutely fine here. Again, the goal here is how critical your team's expertise is, and your integrated approach to address the big question you are proposing on understanding human pain. Okay, the next question is, can the investigators be in the same institution but have diverse but complementary interests and have never collaborated for? Yes, I addressed that in the previous question. It is absolutely allowed, but make sure you justify the clear need for that collaboration. And then in your team management plan, you have to justify how you would really collaborate and manage the team. Okay, so the next question is, are basic animal studies allowed? If yes, would a combination of animal model with a human model studies designed as a unified project to better understand and the underlying mechanism in the same condition represent two parallel studies, or can they be viewed as one unified project if presented in that way? So that's again, it can go in either direction, how you present it. So the big question is what's your big goal there, and what's your integrated approach? And within your integrated approach, if you're bringing both animal studies and human model studies to understand the biology of pain and to address your big goal to understand the biology of pain, then it is allowable. But in terms of really combining two separate studies, like for example, if you are combining one set of animal studies and one set of human studies, but the pain condition and the type of animal model doesn't really match well, then that would fall into like non-responsive criteria, because that would look like a parallel project, multiple parallel project you are trying to address under one mechanism. Okay, so the next question is, how many grants will be funded each cycle? I mean, based on the budget appropriations, initial thought would be funding somewhere around 3 to 5 projects. But again, the future year funding will determine the exact number of grants. And even for the current, like FY23, it will be all dependent on budget appropriations, because we still do not have a budget yet for this year. The next question is, are individual ICs involved in funding allocation decisions? So again, the funding decisions are made at multiple levels. Post review, the team meets, and then there are programmatic evaluations, and then goes through the HEAL initiative, multiple committees within those, and then goes to the council where the decision is made. So we are not the 100% decision makers. Then the next question is, can we have more than one PI per institution? Yes, there is no restriction there how many PIs per institution you can have. You can have all 3 to 6 PIs from the same institution. You can have multiple PIs from multiple institutions, and more than one PI from one institution. The next question is, I presume there will be a special study section convened for this review. That is correct. It will be reviewed through the integrated review branch from the NINDS. The next question is, could you please share your slide with the audience? Yes, this entire webinar is being recorded. So you will find the recordings as well as these Q&A in the website. So after the webinar, it will go through a quality check and then it will be uploaded to the NIH HEAL Initiative website. So you can find it under HEAL Initiative funding opportunity as well as under the HEAL Initiative like events where you can find these webinars. And we can, the way we did the outreach for this webinar through multiple like listservs, we'll send the webinar link through those listserv again. Next question is mechanistic investigation of a potential therapeutic in preclinical and clinical models responsive to this RFA. If the sole goal is to understand the mechanism of how the therapeutics work, then it would not be completely responsive, because that falls under the sole goal is to develop the therapeutics. They are to understand the therapeutic. But if the therapeutic is used to understand the biology of human pain, mechanism of human pain, then that would be something which should be responsive to this RFA. Okay, so I just lost the track. Let me see which one. Okay, the next question is there any flexibility regarding 20% minimum effort? Unfortunately, no. So 20% minimum PI report or PI effort for each PDPI is required there. I believe foreign components are allowed. Yes, there has to be very strong justification in terms of foreign components there. And the next question is in the same line, international collaboration is eligible. Yes, there has to be strong justification. And also make sure you provide a very strong team management plan and include your these collaborations, foreign collaboration in your team management plan there. The next question is still confused on no subcontracts point. Just to clarify, we can subcontract if a PI at another institution. So that is correct. If there is another PI, that subcontracting is allowed. But if the subcontracting is done to conduct a study beyond any PI or team member in another place, then that subcontract is not allowed. But if a PI is at another institution, so the project cost for that PI is added as a subcontract. Next question is, will proposals be sent to NIH regular study section for review? I just touched on that point. So this will be a different study section, special emphasis panel. Is preliminary data required? Yes, this is a mechanism where you have to have a strong rationale and some level of preliminary data to convince the reviewers, and also to strengthen your study, what you're proposing. Because if it is just based on like your theoretical assumption, but not backed up by any strong rational or preliminary data, it might not be a stronger application there. Is a preclinical component required? Yes, it has to be both clinical and integrated clinical and basic science side, like preclinical side. That is definitely required. But again, we are not prescribing the relative level of clinical versus preclinical or basic. The next question is, if there is a special study section, will this be a case for all submission dates, or will the project be referred to standard study section? So that is something which is dependent on subsequent reviews, but at this point, it is going through a special emphasis panel study section. The next question is there any benefit in including an ESI as one of the PIs? In other words, would the ESI status be taken into consideration when funding decisions are made? Yes, that there might be some consideration there. and this could also, including new investigators or early stage investigators, also could contribute to some extent in terms of diversification of the investigating team there. The next question is, does human brain imaging count as basic science? Yes, it could be counted as basic science, but if it is just human brain imaging to look at pathways or look at areas of brain, but that's not going to really address question on what is the human brain mechanism, then it will not be responsive. But if by just performing human brain imaging, you can absolutely pinpoint the pain mechanism there, then it could be responsive. Okay, I think I addressed all of the questions in the Q&A chat box. Let's see if there are live questions here from anyone. Yeah, I see a hand raised. So Rachel, can you unmute this attendee or participant? So Lisa, you can unmute yourself and ask question right now if you're still interested.
Oh, sorry, I asked my question in the Q&A. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, live questions from any attendees there? We still have some time, so feel free to ask question, or if I did not provide a clear or satisfactory answer to your question, you can ask again here. And also, this is a time where I'd like to invite any comments from any our RM1 program team from HEAL, from program officials from other NIH institutes and centers. Okay, so I haven't seen any hands raised, but again, just to re-emphasize, so if you are planning to apply for this RM1 mechanism, please feel free to send your thoughts or draft specific aims and or overall just a summary of idea to us, and then we'll be happy to schedule a meeting and discuss and provide you more details based on your application plans there. And it's just not me, as I showed all the program contacts there. You can find all these program contacts in the FOA towards the end of the FOA in program contacts, NIH program contacts. So you can write to them, or you can always write to me, and we can schedule a meeting to discuss and go over your specific plans for the application. And again, the first receipt date is February 14 of 2023. Okay, any other questions? Any feedback on the program? Okay, there's one from in the Q&A. Okay, so the next question is, can you elaborate a bit more on how you said that if we are looking into a mechanism for how a therapeutic will work, that would not be responsive? This is usually related to underlying mechanisms of pain. Yes, so there are two mechanisms there. So if you are proposing utilizing a therapeutic to understand the biology of pain or pain mechanism, then it is responsive. But if your proposal is to understand how the therapeutic works, but not necessarily addressing what is the mechanism of pain processing, pain or pain processing in that pain condition, in that case, it would be non-responsive. I hope I answered your question. If not, feel free to write to us. We can discuss more on that. There's another question I can see is NIGMS participating in this FOA. As far as I know, till now, no, they are not participating in this RFA. Any other questions? Okay, so if there are no other questions, we can conclude this webinar. Thank you everyone for attending this webinar. And again, please feel free to communicate with us, and we highly recommend and suggest that you communicate with us with your application plans so that we can go over and discuss and go over and tell you the exact program fit for your program and what are the absolute program and FOA requirements so that you submit a stronger application, which is responsive as well as which would review good. Okay. Thank you, everyone, and have a good afternoon.